this place with all of the things that the people on the ship discovered when they got here. Are we picking up right where that left off, or are we is there more time between the end of the first season and the start of the second season?
We wouldn't create a cliffhanger like that and then fast forward 2 months. No, so it'll be directly 2 seconds after. We'll pick up and we'll see how the crew of Nathan James is going to get out of that mess. If they're going to get out of it.
So with Alfre Woodard's character, she came in towards the very end of season 1. What did you do to entice her to come and play this villainous type of character? Because
I think we presented her with a pretty cool script that had a really great reversal in it. It was kind of one of the fun things about that that finale was that we had Alfre and another amazing actor, Titus Welliver,
yes,
who is classically cast as the bad guy.
Yes.
And we needed to have a complete flip where you had, for the first 2/3 of the finale, you're like, oh, she's a nice warm mom of Lieutenant Granderson, and I completely trust her that we should just waltz right in there and go into her, and it feels like a happy ending. And here's this other guy, Titus Welliver, playing Thorwald, who even named the character Thorwald after the villain from Rear Window.
Oh.
Subliminal for those of you who might be Hitchcock fans. Anyway, so he sort of classically goes along, and you think he's the bad guy, and then we had that that great flip. So for Alfre, it was giving her what we think is a really cool script, talking to her about how it would arc into the next season, and a very interesting character who is kind of someone who, in her own weird way, believes in some kind of idea of a master race.
Yeah.
And very unexpected, from a character like that. So.
Yeah, she doesn't normally play that type of villainous, duplicitous type of characters, and so I found it so refreshing.
She has tremendous strength, and she has a conviction, and she has an intelligence, and I think you can see this sort of there's a reason to her madness, that she has.
She firmly believes in what she's doing.
It's a Machiavellian point of view based on this is an extreme situation, and this is a crisis. There's chaos, and someone needs to control order. I mean, that's how dictators get established. They go into places where there's a power vacuum, where people have a need and a desire. I mean, that's what's happening in our world, in half the world. That's why we have dictators there, because someone comes in with some kind of way of making people believe in them, and coming up with some kind of rationale that lets people think that they're going to be safer with them than they are, on their own.
And with Titus on board, he is typically cast as, a bit nefarious, to some extent, always somebody a bit grandeur. And in this case, we're wondering, he may not be all that we think he is either. So would you say in season 2, we might be able to see shifts in these characters that we have that are set up, that are very dynamic, with, our leader here that we've mentioned is amazing, but not necessarily have everyone's best interests. I mean, we know we're burning bodies. And then you have Titus, who we think is essentially a bad guy, but may not be. Thorwald may not necessarily be who we think he is. So is that one of the dynamics that you're going to be reaching into in season 2?
I mean, there's a reason that we cast Titus. He has a complexity to him. So whether seems like the bad guy, or maybe he's the good guy, and there's an adage of the enemy could be my friend.
Right.
I mean, right now, Obama's, talking to Iran because he needs to fight ISIS, but that doesn't mean he trusts Iran, right? So, there may be an unlikely alliance formed between Chandler and Thorwald to combat Granderson, but who knows where that will go.
Are there any other new characters that we're going to be seeing at the start of the season?
Yes, we will be introducing along the way. The James will pick up several new, fresh faces.
Military or civilian?
A bit of both.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Heard from, Hank, that the season is going to pick up exactly where it left off of season 1.
Right.
So what can you tell us about how the USS Nathan James and being overrun, what can we see in the first episode that you can spoil a little bit, but not too much? Like, what we're going to see with the characters?
The challenge of having your ship stolen is huge, and they're not going to stand for it. So, clearly in the two-parter, the major challenge is, what do we do about this? How do we come together as a team with everybody split up and the bad guys on the ship? And how do we kick some ass and get it back, or do we? Oh, spoiler!
Alert!
Spoiler alert. You heard it here
called
first.
The Last Ship.
So can you let us know what we're going to see with some of your characters? Will we see some backstory? Will we find out what happened to Slattery's family? Because we don't know for sure exactly what happened to them. And then will we see any history about everyone's families and how the illness kind of like decimated the United States?
Those issues will be addressed. We do have a chance in this season to do some exploring on land and find out what happened to our families. Not everyone gets the answers to those, but we do get a chance to explore them.
Yeah, because in season 1, everyone's backstories has kind of just been touched upon and stuff. So, and then you've gotten so, invested into these characters, and you're, want to find out like what's happening, what's going on with their families. Will they find some kind of peace or resolution? So, I was just, kind of seeing like what we can look forward to in season 2 for your characters.
Well, a lot of that depends on, since we're on a ship and we're confined, we have to be near your family for you to look for your family. So a lot of it depends on where we are and what we're doing at the moment. So some of the tension is, do we have to pay attention to our mission if we're right off the coast of Norfolk and your family's in Norfolk, or is it more important for you to find your family? So there's tension there. There's tension of who your family may be with, what they may believe about the virus or not. They may think it's propaganda. There's all these.
I think from the beginning, the challenge of our show after the pilot was, and every great television show, you have to invest in character. That's why many shows, like Lost, ultimately were about the people, how they lived and how they died. And you've got to care about the characters, and I think season 1 did a great job to lay enough cookie crumbs in the forest, about all our characters. In season 2 those cookies will become bigger cookies. and we will learn, as the goal is to get the cure out there, and the challenges our characters face in who doesn't want the cure out there, which is really interesting story-wise, because if let's say there were people who were naturally immune, people like having the power, and they may not want the great equalization, the great equalizer of everybody being cured. They would rather just be cured and rule the world. Who knows? So our characters come up against those huge challenges.
Especially with Alfred Woodard's character at the very end. She kind of took a turn that I wasn't expecting, and her sort of plan doesn't seem to be copacetic with everyone else's ideals, especially about how she wants to be discriminative against who gets the cure and who doesn't get the cure. So that's obviously going to play a huge role in season 2, because she's taken the ship.
Well, yeah, you said ideals, which is interesting because there's groups we're going to run into, people that have ideals, and sometimes those ideals will clash. I mean, sometimes we call them bad guys, but the way that the show is written, there's clashes of people. Both groups think they're doing the right thing a lot of times. So we'll run into that. We'll run into some groups of people that think they're doing the right thing for the planet. We think we're doing the right thing for the planet. And
Exactly.
Will we see that with any of our characters? I mean, we assume they're a whole working as an entity together after the first season, but now that there is that establishment with what we've got with Granderson and her group, then, perhaps there'll be some side changing, switching.
Well, that's very interesting, and I suspect that maybe down the road But that's a really interesting question. And I
Everyone is
think-
at risk.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, everyone is at risk. But I think that one of the core, the central roots of our show is still Navy, and being true to that. And we still deal with that in season 2, but down the road, you know, who goes where and why is a very interesting question.
And the ideals of the Navy: honor, courage, commitment, and the pledge to uphold the Constitution of the United States is a beautiful thing in the chaotic world that now exists in the last ship. So we have to figure out a way to hopefully rebuild some form of civil society while portraying those ideals in an honorable way.
Might that mean you disobey your commander-in-chief?
Sorry, guys.
Sorry.
I'd say
Well,
anything's possible.
We don't have one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alfred Woodard is sort of trying to be your commander-in-chief, but
She's trying.
yeah.
We don't necessarily
Yeah.
like that.
She wasn't appointed or voted in.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's for the cushion for the camera. Yeah, it's a gel cushion to leave here.
You get blisters from taking so many photos.
I'm going to sit on the other side.
All right.
Because it seems like
You have
those
a
guys are
preference?
all...
You wanna help
There we go. It's better.
So obviously the burning question is, what is the
It's
Where's the
triplets.
fire?
Triplets.
triplets? Okay, wonderful.
And they're all wearing cowboy boots and they kick really hard and they're cussing.
So they're the new crew
that's
of
just the
USS
girls. You
Nathan.
haven't
Yeah,
even met the boys.
the new crew of USS Nathan, James.
We sorted it out. We populated the situation. Can we go?
You've saved mankind.
Yeah.
Just like that.
And what are their names, sweetie?
There's Daisy May.
Huckleberry.
Huckleberry. I'll be your Huckleberry.
So with Dr. Scott, she's obviously found sort of the cure for this, terrible virus. But coming back to the United States, Alfred Woodard's character Granderson is kind of got her own agenda. So when do we see your character kind of change from being aligned with the USS Nathan James and their crew, and how she's going to deal with what Granderson is wanting to do with that cure?
Well, that's what basically transpires in the first couple of episodes, and so it's really not what I do per se, but it's what we all have to do. This is what we're all left in.
We're kind of in utter havoc at the time. You know, we end that episode, and Granderson's got the upper hand. Clearly. So it's really about how the heck are we going to band together when we're so far apart. Dr. D. Scott's in a boatload of trouble there with Granderson having the upper hand on her as well.
We should try. I mean, I think it's a bit of a case of, because they from the very beginning wanted to sort of recruit my knowledge and bring me over to the other side, and because there's such a sense of delusion from her camp about what she's doing, there's really no, in her mind, there's no. Once she shows me what it is that she's doing, you know, she thinks it's a pretty obvious thing that she thinks as being a scientist that I'll be able to transition, and it's how we deal with that in the first couple episodes, and then what happens to her as a result of that, and then also her agenda, and then you really kind of have to see. That's all we can tell you on that point, because that's our first couple of episodes.
Okay.
Because we got notes not to say
I'm
too much.
joking. No, I don't want you to spoil it for me. I love the show. I watched the entire first season, hands on chin, because I was like, what's going to happen? So,
I think she's a fantastic character. I think to have somebody in that position played by somebody who has the grace, dignity, and sort of gravitas of Alfred is just, it's such an extraordinary thing to have. Somebody who's quite Machiavellian and who could be so sort of, wicked and rubby fingers, and you actually sort of for a moment stop as an audience member and even us and kind of go, well, maybe she's got an idea, and then So
It's not such a bad one. It could
She's so
possibly work.
duplicitous.
Yeah.
Bring a new world order to the place, and I'm sure there's people who watch the show who go like, that's not a bad way to go. We can cull the herd, and we can survive and reestablish ourselves.
So as
ethnic cleansing.
as the two civilians on the Nathan James, are we going to see? Yeah, the
two normal ones.
Yeah, the civvies. Are we going to see a breakdown of some of that military order as the season goes on? Now that they know that their commander in chief is so evil. I mean, in the sense that
Granderson.
Because if she's
president,
president, she's commander in chief. Are we going to see a sort of breakdown of their system as the season goes on if they don't trust their commander?
I think the Navy that whole idea of the Navy protocol and remaining really authentic and dedicating part of the show to that. It definitely gets challenged, but it's the challenge, of course, is keeping it still in place and keeping that natural order of things, because it's tried and true at least within the first season, that this kind of protocol is what gets us to survive as well. You have a guy at the top, you got Chandler calling the shots and the XO following it and the Master Chief after that. And without that kind of order, you'd have mayhem. You'd have the mutiny episode where we pull it all back together. So I don't think it's an element of the show that will ever go away, and because of it's the last ship. But you're correct in that it's constantly, it's going to get nudged, it's going to get needled, it's going to be challenged. They're going to have to find solutions to the problems.
And it's exposing those fractures, and I'm actually really interested in seeing that as if I was an audience member, I'd want to see some of the kind of fractures in that. And I think characters like Tex and Rachel, because they're so, the Navy is like this, linear, structured, and we're very ad hoc and sort of have our own formula and freedom, and also by the nature of what we have to do and the way we were sort of trained in what we do, there's really no route to anything. It's like you react to things as they happen, whereas the Navy has to have a very structured plan. Yep. And we come in and kind of go, well, we hear that, but this might happen, and so, and with Rachel, particularly with the captain, she comes in and he needs structure and he needs definitive plans, and she's like, well, it's science and I can't give you that. So in that, he gets to sort of, I think, expose some of his own human behavior, which is underneath that.
Well, and that brings up a good point, though, too, because Chandler would be able to say, he's relied on the two of you, to actually make those decisions that aren't necessarily considered the standard military decisions, which may be something that's needed in this new world. Mm-hmm. So it may become more valuable to get that input.
Yeah, because you have to color outside those lines, because what they hold on to, which is that rod and staff, which is then questioned like, well, what does that all mean anyway, when all is said and done? But what is called for is the fact we are chartering unknown territory, and so people that are good at thinking outside the box, and people and Chandler's brilliant like that, because he knows that basically we have to work as a whole to move forward, and the greater good is what's at stake here and what's paramount. Mm-hmm. And so his humility allows him then to allow everybody else to do their job.
Yep.
And then keep all his little ducklings, the rest of the ship, going quack, 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 saluting and doing their thing. Well, that's what it's like sometimes, and then sometimes the ducklings stray and he has to go, no, this way, or no, you can get off the boat and go and swim wherever, and they go,
I don't think the Navy's going to be digging at the sailors and ducklings. I just don't think that's like on par.
I think that'll be a great tagline for the next season. The last ship and their ducklings.
Well, I'd be the ugly duckling, so that's good.
Not true. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for season 2.